Good afternoon, everybody. Happy World Ocean Day. If it's the first time you're joining us online, I have Choy Aming with me live from the aquarium. Choy is actually at work today. Afternoon, how are you, Choy?
Hello, I'm good. Yes, I'm at the aquarium. I'm at work. So, yeah,
So,
everything's good.
how does the World Ocean Day feel any different for you?
Yeah, it feels about the same. Every day is Ocean Day around here, so it's like, yep, no different. So,
I think it's
yeah,
pretty much the
it's probably different because we actually are doing like some webcam stuff rather than fish. So that's how you know it's a day when you're not in the ocean and you're actually doing something like talking to people. Yeah,
different. All right,
different.
cool.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So we're talking about sharks today with Choy. I mean, no, Choy always talks about sharks, but we can't do World Ocean Day without talking about sharks. So if you guys are not into sharks, you can go and have lunch. But if you're into sharks, you should hang out with us. Did baby Choy already like sharks?
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was in the sea from when I was a little kid. I didn't know what anything was, but I was drawn to it. Yes. So I didn't learn stuff till much later, but I was always in the sea. I made up my own names a lot of time for animals. So yeah, it was crazy. So
All right, cool. Well, hopefully you're not going to make up too many names right
no, you can't do that anymore. When you're 8, it's fine, but
Well,
these days,
when you discover your own species of shark, you can name it.
yes.
Have you
I'm
thought
waiting.
about a shark name that you can use once you get one?
I mean, well, scientifically with the Latin, you'd have to probably go like Amingi or something like that
Vinky,
because it's
yes, it's
it's
Vinky.
always your surname with like an I at the end. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess it will have to go that route. Yeah.
All right, cool. So, welcome back to everybody. If you guys have questions for Choi, put them into the comments on the Facebook page, right? And we will try to answer them live. And if we can't get to them live, we'll try to get back to get to them later on. So, I wanted to take a little different approach with you, Choi, today for the sharks because we know they've been around for a long time. So
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how old they are, how long they've been around, and kind of like rewind a little bit, the movie of life on the planet. I mean, this morning we talked with Robbie and Trevor about the geology, how the Bermuda volcano was born, and explored a little bit in the depth. And the first eruption that started to create the Bermuda Seamount is 100 million years old. Were
Yes.
sharks around in the ocean already at that time?
Oh yeah, well before that. So basically everybody knows what I look like. I'm gonna flick a little slideshow up and I'll go through so that way you guys have some things to go off of. So let me just hit my slideshow. But sharks basically are about twice as old as dinosaurs, which aren't even around anymore. So unfortunately, because I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, with the sharks go back about 450 million years. So this is actually what they think the first shark probably would have looked like. And dinosaurs started about 200 million years ago. So I mean, more than twice as old as a dinosaur. So they would have looked like this. And the reason sharks evolved first is because they're cartilaginous. So sharks actually evolved before we had bony skeletal structures on any animals. So the only thing hard on a shark or like permanent would have been the teeth and some of the jaw. Oh, sorry. Uh,
So I think it answers our it kind of like answers our question. The first question they're already popping in on Facebook. Like, how long have sharks been around Bermuda? Forever.
Yeah, well, they would have. I mean, if you had 450 million years ago, they were wandering through the seas. Modern sharks were 200 million years ago. And if Bermuda was 100 million, I figure probably as pretty much as soon as the volcanic eruption settled down and ended, like it's literally probably the day after the lava was cool, you probably had a couple sharks rolling up.
Yep.
So literally since day one, maybe day two, but pretty close.
All right.
Yeah. And then here's just a history, because I don't think people really, I like to throw some of the sort of paleontology and geology stuff in there, just because I don't think people really appreciate how old, you know, the Earth is, and then how sharks fit into that, how old they are. So, you know, 2 billion years ago, you didn't even have an oxygen atmosphere on the Earth. So literally, you know, we had a completely different gas composition. It would have been like one of the planets we see in the solar system. And then 600 million years ago, we got our ozone layer. And before that, there was too much radiation for anything to evolve on land. So everything was in the sea. The first, I guess, creature that, you know, we'd be familiar with, not the first creature, but the first thing that we'd know that would probably be similar back then as it is today, be a jellyfish, because there wouldn't be too much reason for a jellyfish to change. And that would have been 580 million years ago. And then first types of fish would have been 500 million years ago, no bones, armored fish with no jaw. And then sharks came around about 450 million years ago. So, you know, this is, dinosaurs aren't even thought of at this time. So nothing's actually, when the first sharks came out, there wouldn't have really been anything on land. Land would have been empty.
But actually, that was kind of like it's good, because I was kind of like actually ask you, when do we think you know, animals kind of like got out of the ocean to get onto?
Oh, well, yeah. What I've done is, because the Earth's 4.6 billion years old, and that is just an enormous number to try and wrap a mammal brain around, because we have, you know, advanced brains, but they're little mammal brains. So with the history of the Earth, if you condense it into a year, which is much easier for us to understand, Jan 1st, Earth would have formed. First life would have just been single cells, you know, end of February. And then photosynthesis would have happened in the single cells in March. So you would have had, I wouldn't call them, you would have had basic plant cells floating around. And then basically halfway through the year, you're only getting to cells with a nucleus. So this is half the history of the Earth, is just cells, single cells with a nucleus. That's all we get to halfway through. And then fungi pop up. You get the first fish swimming around in the water. Again, nothing like a modern fish, but it would have been, you know, external armor, probably some cartilage, no jaws, things like that. And then land plants, first land plants would have been November. So you can see the dates all there. Sharks came really early as far as a large predator goes, November 25th in that calendar year. So, and you can see we're up to basically Thanksgiving, we got sharks, but nothing we're familiar with. So you see how late in the evolutionary game, everything popped up. It would have all popped up around December. So fish would have given way to amphibians. Amphibians gave way to reptiles. Reptiles split into mammals and birds. And then I like to throw flowers in there just because it's something we take for granted. But flowers didn't show up till, you know, the 20th of December, so nearly Christmas. And then your dinosaur extinction 66 million years ago would have been Christmas Day. So it just gives you an idea how sort of enormously long the geological history of the Earth is and where everything fits into it.
So I don't want to you know, to open like a very philosophical and difficult discussion, but we have a question that came up. Is this theory or is this proven? The whole evolution.
This is absolutely proven fact. We have every branch of science, without getting into a whole debate, but every branch of science, the chemistry, the physics, the geology, the biology, it literally all meshes together. Literally everything we've ever learned, none of this is theorized. It's scientific theory, but scientific theory and what you are theorizing when you think of something are two completely different things. Scientific theory is basically fact. So, and it's supported by fact. So this is literally everything we know. And the reason we're an advanced civilization today, we know all these things and it's all lined up for us. So anyway,
I think a lot of people are appreciating to see those, like, you know, past kind of like the the
I know.
summary of the history of the Earth on 1 year. You know, a couple of people have commented that they love that timeline to
Yeah,
give us
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like an idea of like, you know, how old things are, how long they've been around, you know, and all this stuff. So thanks.
Well, and then jumping back into sharks, so you see the modern shark. This is what a 200 million year old shark would have looked like. So that's when the modern sharks would have started, and dinosaurs would have started around the same time. So there would have been other reptiles roaming the earth, but the traditional dinosaurs that we think of would have started at 200 million years ago to, I think, 66 million years ago, just to ballpark it. Yeah, and then I threw a megalodon slide in there because if there's a kid watching, there's going to be a megalodon question. There always
There
is.
are many kids watching, I think. So
Yes,
thank you.
yes. So this is, you can see you there, great white. Everybody's seen great whites on Discovery Channel at least. Most people have seen a whale shark, and whale sharks, you know, that's the size of a bus. And then megalodon is here at conservative size and the maximum size. I've actually, so they lived 23 to 2 million years ago. I've actually seen a megalodon tooth, and it's probably double the size of my hand. They're enormous. So yeah, a full grown big one. You know, you can get them. You can actually, you can probably buy at least copies off Amazon these days. But anyway, they're around quite a bit. So that's megalodon there. And I say all that to say this: 450 million years of evolution doesn't care about your day at the beach. So what happens is everyone's always like, you know, worried about sharks in the water, and 450 million years they've been swimming around doing their thing. But also in Bermuda, the chance of you coming across a shark is extremely rare. The reason I started studying sharks probably 13 years ago was I done 2,000 dives on the Bermuda Reef and never seen a shark. And my question was, where are they? So that's literally what got me into it, was going to look for them because I was just bored of seeing parrotfish. So
Interesting. So I don't have to ask you why, you know, how you got into
yeah.
studying them. Cool. So do we have sharks in Bermuda?
Yeah, we do. And I'll throw up a couple pictures of Bermuda sharks. These are all pictures I took in local waters. Now, pretty much we have to go offshore to usually the banks, which is, you know, about, I think the center point of the bank's probably 12 miles offshore, roughly. So tiger sharks, the reason we study tiger sharks is because we have a where and a when. I know where I can find them and what time of year I can find them. So it makes them really easy to study, especially when you have to load up a boat with gear and drive it out and, you know, wait offshore to look for the animals. Obviously, it's a bit of an endeavor. So studying sharks is a slow process. So the tigers are great because they show up where and when. So this is a picture of a tiger out at Challenger. And then the next, probably the most common shark we have in terms of numbers is a Galapagos shark. People call them duskies, people call them puppy sharks. I've even heard people call them reef sharks. That's just local names that get thrown out. Common names don't mean a lot, so you can't really hold somebody to it. It's a Galapagos shark because scientific name is Galapagensis, and they show up in large numbers sometimes, but the thing is they show up opportunistically. So they show up when they want to show up. Whereas the tiger sharks, I know in July, if I go to the banks and it's a calm day, chance of getting a tiger shark really high. With these guys, they literally show up when they want to show up, and in whatever numbers, you know, you'll see them in. They vary anywhere from singles to fives to I've seen as many as 80 at one time. And these are the ones that you would typically hash, just because, not that I'm a fan of shark hashing, but as locals, you know what that is. And also their shark oil barometers are generally made from these guys. So this one has more commercial application than anything else. And then this is blue. I love these guys. They're rare to see. They're only offshore, but I love this picture because you can see the hydrodynamic nature of the shark. You see the big wings. I mean, it really looks like a torpedo going underwater. And they always have a couple pilot fish with them, which I love. It's just such an interesting creature. And like I said, they're true ocean wanderers, so you only ever see them really far offshore. And then this is a close-up of a six-gill. Six-gills are actually really common here, but they live between 1,000 and 5,000 feet deep. So 1,000 to 5,000 feet deep, it's devoid of light. They don't see daylight, hence the big green eye. So they've got that large green eye there because they never see daylight. This one's 14 foot long. We didn't weigh it, but we're estimated probably 900 pounds. This is one that we actually tagged when we were filming Ocean Vet. We tagged a couple 6-gill sharks, and just to see what their movement patterns were. And very common around the island, but you just never see them. But based on sort of fishing data and how quick they'll pick up a line, I know there's a ton of these around. And what they do is these are the big scavengers. So if a whale dies or, you know, something large dies, these are the things that live in the deep, dark ocean that scavenge all the remains. So, and they can go weeks, probably months without eating, these guys. So really interesting. And then here's a whale shark. And that was also out at the banks. You see the little scuba diver in the front, and then you see the size of the whale shark. This one we know was about 40 feet because we were in a 36-foot boat, and it pulled up next to the boat. So we all jumped in and had a swim and a look at it. And it was actually scratching its back against the keel of the boat. And it ended up with a couple blue bottom paint streaks on its head. So it was pretty funny. But I guess it had a bit of an itch because it was really going for it on the back of the boat, just like my cat or dog would against like a piece of furniture. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, I wonder how long a blue paint, trace on the
how long it lasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the skin is smooth forward, and if you go backwards on a shark, it's like sandpaper. So it actually took a bit of paint off. It was interesting to see that.
Yeah. Cool. So how long have you been studying sharks for here in the
But we started filming in 2007, put out a couple tags in 2008 just as a trial, and then 2009 really kicked off, and we got sponsorship and started putting out the tags then. So I guess that's 11 years solid and 13 years in the water with sharks.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple of results you can summarize quickly for me? I mean, I know some people have seen them, but it would be cool to have a
yeah, for sure. So this is a picture of one of our tiger sharks. And this is just a quick summary of what I've learned in the last 10 years about Bermuda sharks. So we've tagged about 50 sharks, 40 were tigers. You can see most of them are male, most of them are adult. We've only ever had one adult female show up. I've only ever seen one adult female. And also, this is what we've tagged, but I've been in the water, I would guesstimate close to 200 sharks. And I don't think I've ever seen, usually you can see the boys from the girls quite easily once you get within about 20 feet of them. But I do not recall ever seeing another adult female. So I'm just going to leave it at one. And obviously, if you've only ever had one in 200 that I've seen, one adult female, we don't have a lot of breeding here, but we do have some breeding. So it raises some few questions. So just remember that in a minute. And just sizes, because everybody likes to talk about how big the shark is. This is probably results of about 100 sharks that I've actually measured with a tape measure and brought them up to the boat to get DNA samples and measure them. 9 foot is the average. Smallest one I've ever seen is 4. I know they come smaller here, but I've never put my hands on one under 4 feet. The largest is about 11, and that doesn't include the tail. That's basically body length. So that's nose to fork of the tail. Yeah. So that's those ones. Now it's interesting because if you see an 8-foot shark, it weighs 350 pounds. Sharks grow about a foot a year. So if a shark's 2, it's probably 2 years old. If a shark's 4, it's probably 4 years old. 8-foot sharks, 8 or 9 years old. They weigh about 350 pounds. The average 10-foot shark is actually 700 pounds and probably 15 years old. So an 10-foot shark is double the weight. So, it's twice as much shark and nearly twice as old as an 8-foot shark. So if you put them next to each other, the 10-foot looks absolutely huge, but lengthwise, it'd only be about 2 feet longer. So that's just some sizes that we see. Now, this is one of the tags. So we bolt through the fin, and that reads to different satellite systems, satellites passing overhead. This tag sends a signal up to it, and then that is several years of data right there. So that is a bunch of our shark tracks just overlaid on top of each other. So I've got my mouse here. This is Bermuda here, and then we're the cluster. You can barely see it. And then you can see, so Nassau to Bermuda, that's about 1,000 miles, just to give you some scale. So that's 1,000 miles there. But what you'll see is some clusters there. There's a few little clusters out here, and there's cluster, cluster, cluster. So these clusters are where the sharks are hanging out for a period of time. And then you can see all these lines are them swimming. So what I'll do is, this is a little more zoomed in, and you can see what I was talking about a bit better. So you can see cluster, cluster, cluster. So what we found in 10 years is all the females stay in the Caribbean so all our sharks, for all our adult sharks, come from the Caribbean. All the females stay in the Caribbean for the wintertime. The males will head off around maybe April, May, springtime, head up and do these big laps around the ocean and then come back. So, and it's pretty consistent with, other people's satellite data and visual data that we can say, the males and females separate for about half the year. And then this is one shark all zoomed in. This is Harry Lindo. And he's a great shark that we had. Now you can see this is his home range here. So this is his house. This is where he lives. And then every year, so red is a year, yellow's a year, blue's a year, orange is a year. So you can see like the yellow ones, you see the clusters and it goes up, hangs around here for a bit, goes around, comes back down. So that's a year. Now the reds goes up, hangs around here, swings by Bermuda, comes back down. But you can see it is the same pattern. He leaves, comes here for the winter, leaves in the spring on one of these lines, heads up, and then heads over here, and then by about November, back in. And Harry Lindo did it so well that this is 3.5 years of track. This is actually the longest shark track in the world in terms of time, not distance, but in terms of time. This condensed little mess is the longest shark track in the world. And what we found is he was leaving this area in the same week, 3 years in a row, swimming out to the ocean, spending about 5.5 months, and then returning pretty much the same week, coming back to this spot. So he'd be back in this spot within the same week every year for 3 years in a row. So not only can they tell where they are in the ocean, they have a concept of time. So it's pretty wild.
So I think I'm going to stop you here with 2 questions.
Yeah.
So just for people to be aware, is like, so those tiger sharks, they kind of like come and hang out at a certain time of the year.
Yes.
So the tiger sharks in winter, you won't see them.
You're very hard pressed to find a tiger shark in the winter.
There we go.
Not impossible, but if you find a tiger shark in the winter, it's going to be a little guy.
Yeah. And there was another question that came through the Facebook page. And guys, please keeping on sending your questions, right? You kind of answered it with Harry Lindo, because the question was, how long do the tagging device last? But I mean, it was maybe amazing to have him been transmitting for 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's an extreme. So we have 2 sharks that did 3 years for us, and like I said, I think we have the top 2 sharks actually in terms of duration of time. Usually a tag will last about a year, maybe 1.5 years. I've had some, only last a couple months, but we've had several make it over 2 years and 2 of them make it over 3 years.
All right, cool. I think I can relate, as we were talking about seasons. It's not sharks, but it's like, well, it is. Whale sharks that you mentioned before. Is there a season for the whale sharks? Do they come here at a specific season?
Right now. Yeah. It seems to be end of May, beginning of June. Because what happens is, it's amazing how many messages people will message me, like, we saw this, or send me pictures. And, a lot of times it's people I don't know, but they'll find me on, say, Facebook and send me a message, which is cool because I've had a bunch of people that I either know or people have sent me stories, but I'll keep a little catalog, and pretty much every year in May or June, somebody spots a whale shark.
The whale shark.
So I don't know why they're here, but if you go out around now, the chance of spotting a whale shark is, the highest it's going to be in any calendar month. So.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And then these are just 2 guys eating here, and they actually have a little hierarchy when they feed. So we've got the marlin head here. So that's 100 pounds of marlin. That's these are probably like 9 and a 10-foot shark. I mean, these are solid big guys here. And we have the rope. We have a chain there so it doesn't rip through. Because if you give one of these guys a tuna, it'll swim off and eat his meal in peace. What we've had to try and do is design like what we call the dog chew toy. It's like, if you give your dog a treat, it'll run off and eat the treat. But if you Yeah, if you run off, it'll run off and eat the treat. But what actually happens is we had to make something so the sharks would stay there and just chew on something and stay with us rather than swim off with their treat. So what actually happens is you've got this guy feeding and this guy sitting it out, and they will take turns and develop a hierarchy. And with the hierarchy, it's not necessarily the largest shark that is the boss. It's actually the most aggressive. I've seen an 8-foot shark displace a 10-foot shark quite quickly if it's really, really hungry. Yeah. So, and here's a little close up of a shark eating. So you see the teeth biting down on the 100-pound marlin head. And you can see little isopods too under the belly. So these are little fish lice. And then you can see how close they get up to the boat. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I hear that you're kind of like working on something different these days.
Yes.
Not the big ones so much, but
yeah. Well, like I was saying, we have obviously the one adult female, and we are wondering why, we're seeing the big ones out of the bank. We would hear about cases of small ones, but weren't really seeing a lot of data on it, or sorry, a lot of numbers on it. And I looked around and nobody's got any data on juvenile tiger sharks. Like there's almost none. So I said, well, see if we can get some and stick a tag on, see what it does. So we ended up finding a spot, and over the last 2-3 years, it's been slow going, but it's pretty consistent now. And I'm gonna actually put a couple more tags out this summer. They should be here probably in about 2 or 3 weeks, the tags, and I'll head out and start putting the tags on. So this is a 4-foot guy that we tagged, and we found a spot, like I said, that's quite consistent for finding juveniles. This guy is still very much alive. That's just a quick shot of the of showing the mouth of the tiger shark. And then this is a little satellite tag of that tiger shark. And you can see the spots in the reef line. I couldn't blow them all up to fit on the graphic. It's just the satellite tagging graphic site is a little bit limited. Sorry, but very sensitive on the mouse. The little spots inside the reef line here are usually at night, and then these spots outside the reef line we're finding are in the daytime. So it seems like the little ones are coming in at night to feed and then hiding out in the deeper water in the daytime, which would make sense why we're not seeing a whole lot of them. And you're only hearing about the occasional person catching one at night, and generally it's let go. So so that's sort of what I'm finding so far. And but once I get about 5 or 6 more tags, I'll be able to discern some patterns, whether it be depth or temperature or things like that. I have a little bit of data, but 2 does sample size not to make. So only 2 of them. So now just kind of coming towards the end, we just talk about conservation quickly because it's past, present, and future. And
it's World Ocean Day, so it's nice to know what the situation is with those sharks, and
yes.
what is happening with them. So thank you for that.
Overall, not very good. So what actually happens is with sharks, this is a shark finning, I guess, fishery in Asia, and you can see there's just probably thousands of fins there. And they'll dry them out, and they're just cartilage, and it's a status symbol, and doesn't really have any medicinal properties, but still heavily consumed, particularly at Chinese weddings. So now with sharks, because they evolved before bony fish, they reproduce very slowly. They produce in low numbers that you can't compare them to a bony fish. There's a completely different reproductive strategy. So they're really easy to wipe out, particularly in the modern age, where we have gotten so good at targeting fish, and we're fishing with technology now. Really a lot of the marine life doesn't stand a chance. So sharks are pretty hammered. So global status. Dalhousie did a study where they took 100 papers and combined all the data, and they came up with a figure. Now this is a university, so now I know in the age of social media, everybody's got a bias, but universities are still pretty much a good standard to compare things against. Now 100 million sharks per year get taken out. That's the estimate. So that's obviously not a sustainable number. And since 1970, we've seen a 50% of sharks, 50% decline of sharks on planet Earth since 1970. So that's tacking a couple years onto my life. Literally just a little bit over the time I've been on planet Earth, we've managed to kill 50% of one of the top predators. And nearly 60% of life on planet Earth has disappeared since 1970. So if you don't think it's a need for conservation at the moment, I don't know what I can tell you. So,
no, and thank you for like, you know, mentioning it and mentioning it and mentioning
yeah,
it, because I think we're always,
yeah,
we sometimes have trouble to see the
yes,
impact that we have,
yeah,
yeah.
and a huge impact. And because there's 8 billion people now, there's just so much more pressure and demand. Scalloped hammerheads, those are the ones we used to get here. People always talk about the schooling hammerheads out at Castle Roads that they would, apparently people used to see them like 20, 30 years ago. Anyway, they've had worldwide a 99% decline in the last 30 years. And a lot of it is just bad fishing practices. So you see these huge long lines that trap animals. Bycatch is probably about half of the, they reckon almost half of the sharks are just wiped out as bycatch when we're fishing target species. And then you get long lines like this. So a lot of it is the Asian fishing fleets. Now, in Bermuda, fishing overall is actually quite sustainable. Everything's caught with a line or a rod and reel. We don't have any commercial trawlers. So we have an educated population. We have rules, we have a level of enforcement. So we're doing it about, I guess, as well as you can do it. And so if you are catching local fish that is caught legally, that is a good way to consume fish, because not only are you supporting locals, but we're doing it in a sustainable way. But a lot of the cheaper fish, the imported fish, that is, I mean, you've really got to figure out the source of the fish, and it's coming from an Asian fishing fleet. Chances are a few rules were broken because that's just how it's been operating for a while. It's really hard to tell. I myself, it's pretty crazy, but I've almost stopped eating fish entirely. I mean, I get the odd bit of local fish from somebody I know, but that's pretty much it. And I love it. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah. And then another huge enemy is actually, everyone's going to hate this, but one of the worst things you can eat is shrimp. So
Oh,
shrimp is
shrimp is
horrible.
horrible. Like bycatch for shrimps. Like, gosh, like they catch
It's
one shrimp and they catch
20,
9 other things that they
yeah,
didn't even catch. Oh
it's
yeah, talking about
20.
bycatch.
Yeah, for 1 pound of shrimp, there's in some fisheries, there's 20 pounds of bycatch that's just discarded to get your 1 pound of shrimp. And then they also do the bottom trawling for them. So they literally like bulldoze the bottom to catch a handful of shrimp and destroy like hundreds of years of growth. But like nobody knows about, this is all stuff you've got to, it's taken me ages to find out lots of this information. It's just really, well hidden. In the internet age, it's coming out more, but 10, 15 years ago, you would be hard pressed to find so much of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
So, and just real quick, I mean, even locally, this is actually a gummy that washed up, a gummy shark.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah, it's got the line in the mouth, and this guy washed up dead. You see the beautiful blue eyes, a beautiful creature. This is a deep water shark that we have locally. And then when it was cut open, there was a couple babies inside. Now, they didn't make it, unfortunately. But just to show you, I mean, that happened about 2 months ago. These pictures are a shark that washed up that somebody sent to me. So, yeah. So that's kind of I guess a little overview, because obviously I know we're limited on time and got to keep World Ocean Day moving. But again, just I love sharks. They're amazing, and just everything in the ocean in general. It's just it's such an incredible place with such amazing life, and we definitely have to look after it. And we've got all these kids online watching us, and we're trying
and I
to
have a few
explain to them.
questions, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing your screen, if you excuse me.
Yep.
One of them that came through was, how big can sharks grow up to?
Oh, well, a whale shark can hit 60 feet. They don't have teeth. They're a filter feeder. Largest of the toothed sharks is going to be your great white. That's alive today. Is going to be your great white, and they go to about 15.
Cool. How long do tiger sharks live for?
The thought is about 30 years. It's tricky to tell with sharks exactly how long they live, because when you date a fish, you will get the ear bone and you'll count the rings in the ear bone. Sharks don't have bones. So, it's a bit of a guesstimate on there, but the thought's about 30 years.
30 years. Very cool. I have one more that was, is there a difference between pilotfish and remoras? Or are they the same thing? Are they doing the
Oh
same
yeah. No,
thing?
so the pilot fish are the little fish, this little stripy fish that were in I think two of the pictures I had
Yeah.
trailing on. So they don't have the suction cup. Now it's not actually a suction cup. It's actually it's like a textured pad that's on the remora. So a pilot fish is a fish that hangs out with a free swimming fish that hangs out with the shark and eats the scraps. Whereas the remora actually attaches to a shark, a whale, a turtle, a manta ray, a large ocean creature, and hitches a ride. And they actually will attach, and the larger animal has to carry the remora through the water. So remora's a bit lazy.
We can see remoras a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah,
In the shallows here.
yeah,
Has
yeah.
there been like a difference in the population of remora? Are they going up, down? Are they the same? And is it linked anyhow with the population of sharks? Or not at all?
I think it's more maybe to do with I've noticed it seems like this is just anecdotal, like I haven't sort of studied it, but I've just seen and heard about people spotting remoras more lately, but it's probably more to do with the turtle or ray population that we have rather than the sharks. Yeah, so because we have so many more turtles now, a big turtle will often have remoras on it, so it's probably more to do with that. Yeah.
Right, cool. I think we're going to, I don't want to keep, everybody too long, but we've definitely had a big following of like some students that were, watching us. That's really cool. I am going to maybe pitch like a little, I don't know, a little call for science funding here, because one of the questions that came through was, how do you pick the sharks' names? So
Oh, how do you pick the sharks'
anything to
names?
do
Yeah,
with
well,
like who
yeah.
sponsors the tags?
It's who sponsors. So what happens is all the sharks get named by who sponsors the tags. If you actually look, if anybody wants to look at the sharks further, all the data is on the website. So it's Guy Harvey Research Institute. So GHRI.
Put it on the comments for people
Yeah.
to to go
Dot,
and check it out.
yeah.
And
Yeah. .org. And all the names on there are the people who paid for the tag to sponsor the shark. So that's what it is. So if you see Miles, that was Miles Market. You see Harry Lindo, that was Lindo's. So there's Masters is on there. So we've got all these corporate sponsors.
So if you guys want to have your name and name a shark, you know what you have to do.
Yes.
Please sponsor a tag for the Bermuda Shark Project.
Yes. You can.
Cool. How much do they cost? How much do they cost?
Yeah, they're expensive. So they're about $6,000, but it's all basically, I'd say 80% of that is the satellite tag and the satellite time. And then I keep the rest because, gas, bait, I break a lot of anchors, stuff like that. So, that's just to keep it going. So it's totally not profit making, but it's very expensive kit that we have. And,
we had another question going, and I think I'm going to have you answer the question by posting on the Facebook page the link to the Ocean Vet Sharks episode.
Yeah,
because somebody was asking about the methods and how you tag them. So I mean, our live sessions today are kind of like short. So and I want to let you guys move on so you can go and scrub some turtles with our aquarists. And then there is a Bermuda Turtle Project, a great video with Jennifer Gray narrating. So I want you guys to be able to go check that out. But Choy, if you could, post the link to the Ocean Vet episode, then people would really see if they want, to see or re-watch it of the methods and how you do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, super. So thank you guys for all your questions. Thank you, Choy, for spending time with us. There might be more questions coming up as other people, watch this with a little delay. So Choy, if you don't mind, like hopping on there. We've had some kids answer each other's questions. It's been kind of interesting, about sizes and year and stuff like that. So go in there and chip in. So next live session, guys, is at 1:15, and we're taking you free diving. with a whole bunch of our freediving kids, the freediving pods that we have around the aquarium. So that should be a fun one with them, sharing how they feel in the water and sharing about their favorite creature in the water. So that should be a fun one. Thank you all. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you a little later on today. Bye. Bye, Choy.
Bye-bye.